Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
All the way back in July 2023, I made a video pitting Regulus, Gojo, and Accelerator against each other. I analyzed their powerful defensive abilities to see not only who had the superior barrier ability, but who would win overall. Now, although I stand by Accelerator being the strongest among them, I did make several mistakes with one character, sometimes sharing blatant misinformation about him. I'm of course talking about Regulus corneas. The Sin Archbishop agreed. As a comment, and eventually I came to realize Regulus' abilities are far more powerful than I gave him credit for, and I heavily underestimated him, especially against Gojo. If Regulus were to battle Gojo, especially with the new updated information, he'd win with shocking ease. So let me analyze the problems with my original video, the observations from the comment section, and the new weaknesses with the Limitless curse technique to see how exactly Regulus corneas could still take the W. Against Gojo at least. Alright people, let's do this one. So Regulus' ability is often referred to as stillness of an object's time, and his ability is actually made up of two abilities that effectively work together. Lion's Heart and Little King. Lion's Heart is the most powerful of the two. Basically, Regulus is able to halt the flow of time on his body, so while time continues to flow around him, his body is in constant state of being frozen. This means that all his bodily functions, like breathing, are stopped, and also means that physical and conceptual phenomena can no longer affect him. He is essentially free from the world's outside influence, and thus ignores all its laws. If his body is frozen in time, then of course the world itself cannot influence him in any way. This basically acts as the ultimate defensive ability. Any attack, no matter their speed, power, or hacks, can still make contact with his body, but since his body is frozen in time, they will do absolutely no damage, as if you didn't attack him at all. Even dirt and water won't cover an inch of his body. In many of his battles, it seems as if Regulus was being easily mollywopped and ragdolled, but at the end of the day, there's not even a scratch on his clothes. Funny enough, he can actually freeze his own momentum and weight, meaning it's impossible for him to even flinch from an attack. Speaking of which, yeah, Regulus can precisely control what elements of his surroundings get frozen. Not just his body, he typically freezes the dirt, water, and air, which causes them to rip through anything they touch. This is because, since they're frozen, there's no phenomena that can really stop them or make them fall apart, meaning whatever he touches essentially become bullets that tear apart whatever they run into. He can apply this to human beings as well. On two occasions, he froze Reinhardt's body and launched him away, and since Reinhardt's body is frozen, no obstacle, like the wind or physical barriers, can stop him. He'll keep being flung until the ability's effects wear off. The thing about this ability, however, is that normally Regulus cannot use it forever. Usually it's only meant to work for a couple seconds. That's until Regulus learned his second ability, Little Kingdom. This allows Regulus to share his heart with his wives, or whoever he deems to be a part of his little kingdom. When his heart is shared, Regulus is able to use his ability without any restrictions, and acts as a second line of defense. As long as his enemies do not know about his heart or how it works, there's no way for them to defeat him. Even if they found out and killed one of his wives, the heart will automatically move to another wife, in which he has dozens of. So stillness of an object's time is the ultimate offense and defense. Not only are you invincible from all forms of harm, but you can essentially turn anything into a weapon. With that out of the way, let's address some of my previous mistakes. First, I didn't at all consider that Regulus' ability can easily bypass infinity. Let's think about this for a second. The Limitless works by dividing the space of an attack infinitely, causing them to slow down and never reach him. It also automatically filters whatever it deems to be a threat and not a threat. But Regulus' attacks are anomalies. They are frozen in time, meaning they cannot be recognized or even registered by any other world's influence, which would include cursed energy. So how would Gojo's Infinity even be able to tell that anything's wrong with Regulus' attacks? Regulus' attacks use everyday things like air and water in harmless amounts. It's not something that the Infinity would be blocking. If the very world can't, then neither would the Infinity. Gojo could switch to manual control of his Infinity to block everything. but Regulus can turn the very air itself into a weapon. It's not like Gojo is gonna stop breathing. It probably wouldn't work either, since again, Regulus and anything he influences can no longer be influenced by the outside world, meaning it wouldn't abide by the concept of dividing space, which the Limitless relies on. So Regulus could easily bypass the infinity and attack Gojo. Gojo uses blue. Regulus takes no damage. Gojo uses red. Regulus takes no damage. Gojo uses purple. Regulus takes no damage. Gojo uses Unlimited Void. Regulus doesn't take any information. Remember, Regulus is completely immune to the world's outside influence, meaning it's impossible for anything in Gojo's arsenal to affect him. Regulus would then kick some dirt or wave his hand to casually rip off one of Gojo's limbs.
It has been implied that as long as Regulus' wives stay within a certain range, the ability will still function. But if the wives were to die or lose Lion's heart in some way, the 5-second time limit would return. So as a bit of insurance, Regulus unfroze the Riz in his body and got himself over 200 wives. Not only does this make it difficult to find the heart among the crowd, but Lion's heart can then switch to a new wife if the previous holder were to die. An added bonus is that oftentimes, people won't even know that the wives are related to his ability. So why exactly would Regulus lose? Well, his wives may not seem too obvious at first, but think about it. Gojo can easily deduce a connection with his 6 eyes. The 6 eyes are an optical ability that not only perceive information at supercomputer-like speeds, but can read cursed energy at an atomic scale. If we adjusted the power a bit and assume the 6 eyes can now see and analyze mana, Gojo would easily be able to see the connection between Regulus' ability and an unknown factor. Tracing these normally invisible connections would lead him back to Regulus' wives. And upon figuring out the correlation between Regulus and the wives, all it would take was one good haul.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
The second mistake I made was assuming that Gojo's 6 eyes could figure out Regulus' weakness by tracking the connection between his wives through mana. First of all, authorities don't see mana, so there's no way Gojo could see that. And second of all, the 6 eyes aren't X-ray vision. It's unlikely he could see that Regulus has no heart at a glance. The only thing that can bypass Regulus' ability that we've observed is the manipulation of time greater than his own. There's obviously Return by Death, which reverses time and everything, and Pandora's Authority of Vainglory, which is a form of causality manipulation.
corneas 司教がここにいるはずがない。彼は自分の屋敷で妻に囲まれて過ごしている。
But don't get me wrong, Gojo fans. I'm not saying that Regulus one-shots Gojo. Despite what I've been implying, there are very few instances where Regulus one-shots a character. He doesn't always go for the kill. Subaru survived, and Reinhardt survived. With the use of RCT, Gojo could easily heal. This is how I think a fight would go. Gojo would close in and try to attack, only to realize that Regulus took no damage. He then used red and blue, ragdolling Regulus, only to again realize that he took no damage, noticing that even their clothes are unscathed. Regulus would then begin yapping about his rights being violated or something, and throw an attack at Gojo, which would bypass the infinity. Gojo would maybe survive and use RCT to heal himself. After this, he'll realize how much of a threat Regulus really is, and use Hollow Purple or Unlimited Void. After realizing that Regulus is still unscathed by either, Gojo would do the smart thing and teleport out of there. After everything he witnessed, I think Gojo would eventually come to the same conclusion Subaru did. Regulus can hold the time of his body, or at least remove himself from the world's influence. At that point, he'd probably think there's no winning with normal means, and decide the only way to beat him is to seal him away with the prison realm. The box does sort of have the criteria needed to affect even Regulus. But that's another story entirely. I don't think Gojo would even figure out the secrets of Little Kingdom. First of all, very specific circumstances fell into place for Subaru to figure it out, like Emilia's time spent with the wives and Subaru's very deep knowledge of the stars. Normally, it would have been impossible to figure it out, but let's do a little experiment. Let's assume Gojo knows everything about Little Kingdom, including the wives and his heart's ability to move between them, and let's assume that all the wives happen to be in one place. At that point, Gojo has 2 abilities to ensure he can nullify the ability once and for all.
領域展開無料空所
Unlimited Void would flood their minds with infinite information, and then Gojo can use the Unlimited Hollow Purple to erase them from existence. While Regulus is shocked and begins yapping, Gojo can lock in, use Unlimited Void to incapacitate him once again, and rip his head right off his body. This is what I'd like to say, but Regulus could just move his heart into Gojo's body instead. But I guess that heavily depends on how Little King fully works. Even Subaru was unsure how exactly the ability functions. Anyways, there's a lot of what ifs that may not even work. So, Gojo can't be Regulus normally, but I also don't think the Regulus can one-shot Gojo. The man is incredibly stupid and got outdone by parkour, so I think a battle like this would simply be a stalemate, with Regulus clearly having the superior defensive ability. But let me ask you a question. Do you think Unlimited Void would work or not?